God bless everyone. Continuing these teaching videos on Canada's roots. And we left off, we were talking about scriptures that are found in Parliament. We were talking actually about World War I and II. And it really shows a lot that the people and the soldiers and the sacrifice. So every time Remembrance Day on November 11th, we can remember that these people had convictions, and they were influenced by the Bible. And remembering that the greatest sacrifice of all was Jesus when he died on the cross for all mankind. And Jesus said, no greater love than this can a man have, or a woman, to die for their brethren. So yeah, that's just something I want to interject in here. We have moving on in the Parliament, the beautiful stained glass windows in the memorial chamber contains a Bible verse, which is taken from 1 Corinthians 15:57. Thanks be to God who giveth us the victory. And 1 Corinthians 16:13, another verse, quit ye like men, be strong. And Nahum 1:7, the Lord is good, a stronghold in the day of trouble. And Jeremiah 23:5, he shall execute judgment and justice in the earth. Thou shalt girdle me with strength unto the battle, from Psalms 18:39. He maketh wars to cease, Psalms 46:9. And judgment shall return unto righteousness, Psalms 94:15. Now we'll move on in inside the memorial chamber, and there'll be reference there to Psalms 139, and it's in the context of death and remembrance to bring comfort, as I was saying, in the World War I and World War II, and it assures people that we are secure and protected, regardless of the situation or the circumstances, when we put our trust in God. And there's a marble panel on the south wall that quotes Psalms 139 from 8 to 10, which actually says, if I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I lay down in the bowels of the earth, thou art there. If I take the wings of the morning, and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, even shall thou lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. And it's also written in French, so it's in English and in French. And so that's very powerful. And there's also a recording angel carved above the entryway or the exit of the memorial chamber. And it's really urging the visitor that if their names have been written in God's book, reference to Revelation 21:27, and to see if we're saved or not. So that's powerful in itself too. The central concept of the Christian religion is that make sure it's salvation, is born again, is trusting God, putting our faith in Him, believing with our heart that Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and also confessing with our mouth that He raised Him from the dead, that God the Father raised Him from the dead. And how Peter answered Him when Jesus told him, "Who do you think I am?" He answered him, "You are the Christ," which means the anointed one, reference to the prophecies in the Old Testament of Emmanuel, God with us, the anointed one. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. So that's powerful. And in the Parliament, they actually said that the recording angel actually records those that gave their life in terms of dying in the wars. But really, you can see a further interpretation as a believer of what the recording angel is in terms of the end of ages, when you determine what your choice was, to trust in God, put your faith in God, believe in Him or not. And so we looked at that. We looked at Ephesians 6, and there's also, below the Ephesians 6 passage, round all the four sides of the altar of which the bronze cover sits, is a quotation from Pilgrim's Progress. Pilgrim's Progress was written over 300 years ago by John Bunyan, a Puritan, who was persecuted for his faith in England. because he was amongst other things, he wanted separation from church and state. And the separation from church and state is not what is been trying to defined now by many lobby groups and humanists and secularists and atheists. Separation from church and state, what was meant by that was like, you know what, they didn't want the church, the state dictating the freedoms and controlling what the people believed, what the people did. And John Bunyan was actually put in prison for a minor thing, just because he didn't go along with the state religion, which was the Anglican Church in England at that time, because he preached, and he preached at his home, and they put him in prison because of that, because he wasn't an official Anglican minister. So we see the abuses of this thing, and what really was the ideal separation from church and state. The government should control the affairs of the government, and the church should control the religious affairs. And they shouldn't be imposed. The government shouldn't be imposing against the conscience of the people. So that's just a little bit something I wanted to put. So Pilgrim's Progress, really, it's a book. It's an allegory for the Christian life, and it records the Christian's ultimate victory over the battles and troubles in their life. And it's actually a Christian going through the process of here on earth, the trials, tribulation, sufferings, and actually going to the destination, the celestial city. So it includes a lot of, what do you call them, spiritual warfare. And the quote is actually from Mr. Valiant for Truth, and it reads, which is a character in this book, Pilgrim's Progress: "My marks and scars I carry with me, to be a witness for me that I have fought his battles," God's battles, "who now will be my rewarder." So he passed over, and all the trumpets sounded for him on the other side. And that's the hope, the Christian hope, that we'll hear the trumpets, and we'll hear Jesus telling us, "Well done, faithful servant." Wow. And so, and it reminds them that there's a spiritual element to our life, that we have to, our battle is not with flesh or blood, like Ephesians 6 talks about, but against principalities. It's against all these wicked controlling systems from the spiritual beings. So, and we're in a constant war. So it was not just World War I or World War II. As a believer, we can see not just the physical, but the spiritual. Because the influences of these wars, in terms of, like, for instance, the personality of Adolf Hitler, he was definitely influenced by demons and the enemy there. And it's not reference to conquest by force or coercion, and it's actually in the spiritual realm, like 2 Corinthians 10, 3-6 talk about breaking down the walls of ignorance, the ideas that stand against God. I'll just read it actually so we can have a better understanding. 2 Corinthians 10, from 3-6, which says, "For though we walk in the flesh, we do not war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not carnal, but mighty in God for pulling down strongholds, casting down arguments and everything that exalts itself against the knowledge of God, bringing every thought into captivity to the obedience of Christ, and being ready to punish all disobedience when your obedience is fulfilled." So it's talking about the spiritual battle we're faced daily, and to preach out against the oppression. Interesting, continuing the thought of the parliament, when the Russian prime minister came in the 80s, Mikhail Gorbachev, with the former USSR, then it was USSR, and he was impressed by the parliament buildings, and he said, "Wow, is that a castle?" And then he said, "Your country must have had great dreams for your parliamentary government to express it in such a magnificent Gothic structure. And so this will tie into the next part of the video about the Gothic architecture.